just was at the point, I was like, look, I am completely surrendering here. We were going down like a burning dirigible in the sky with just pieces of this thing flaming and falling to the ground. And then learning in that time to just say, I know there's a path. I know there's a path. And I know you know it because I don't. I can't see it. And saying, which way?
This is Touched by Heaven. Everyday encounters with God. Those moments when heaven and earth collide and we see God. We see His hand reaching out to us, attempting to get our attention, inviting us into a closer relationship. Here we share stories of encounter with angels, divine intervention, prophetic dreams, visions, near-death experiences, big and little God incidents. I'm your host, Trapper Jack. Welcome to episode 179. I was very aware this morning when I was praying that my mind was not being still, which is the focus of this episode. It's just be still and know that He is God, that there's a plan. We just need to connect into that plan. Simple, right? Except my mind was not being still this morning. It was just racing from one thing to another. Been there? Yeah. And it was like I was talking to my mind like it was a kid. Would you settle down? Just settle down. Would you? Don't make me come up there. Don't make me. Did you hear? Are you listening? And it wasn't working. So that's that. So it's perfect. We're listening to Leesa today and her story. She is in particular attached to that psalm, "Be still and know that I am God." And she has crazy good stories. And she starts really kind of dissecting that "Be still and know that I am God" verse, and how she averted catastrophe, absolute catastrophe for 6 years. Every day it was, which way, Lord? Left, right, up, down, yes, no. Every day for 6 years until finally she got to the other side of this particular storm in her life. So this is quite an episode and some serious learning to be done here, okay? So let's be still. Don't make me come up there. Do you hear me? I'm telling you. Let's meet Leesa.
Hey there.
What you doing?
I just rolled into my garage and I'm home. It's perfect timing.
Ah, very good. Were you working or playing or what were you doing?
No, I was just getting my hair cut.
Oh, it looks a lot better this way.
Oh, it's great. Yeah,
oh, my gosh.
I mean, who can talk on the phone when your hair's not trimmed?
Leesa is from the beautiful state of Montana. She has always been very spiritual, very connected, and had a number of encounter stories along the way. So recently, she was listening to the Touched by Heaven podcast, just happened to stumble upon it and went, "Oh, angel stories. I've got some of those."
You had people on your show who were experiencing interactions with angels. And the kind of interactions that I have had, it's more that we were guided to do things that were really remarkable and entirely unexpected and very unexplainable. But for a period of time in our life, my husband and I went through a really intense stretch of our life. This is where I was able to really learn how to listen. We woke up to learn that overnight, there was a bank in New York City that had underwritten a project that we had worked on for 20 years. And that bank had gone bankrupt in the big recession of 2008 and 9.
Right.
We found ourselves overnight with no ability to earn an income and a lot of debt to pay. For the next 6 years, every month and all the obligations with little to no income, we were able to navigate a very difficult time by listening. Just deeply, deeply listening, asking, surrendering, listening. And through that process, I grew to just get into the absolute habit of literally which way. I would throughout my entire day, I would ask, which way do you want me to go? Because I know I have a lot to do, but I don't know how to do it, and I have to just ask and surrender. We were absolutely, abjectly desperate. And a sweet friend of mine, she loves God, and she said, "Honey, when you go to the store, I'm going to ask you to do this." She said, "Just close your eyes and breathe as a matter of practice. Just close your eyes. You know you need apples, for instance. Stand in front of the apples. Take a deep breath, let it out, and say, 'Father, which one?' And when you open your eyes, train yourself to know which one you're being told. Learn to listen to that very quiet guidance. And if you don't know, move to the next ones and say, okay, I'm now in front of the tomatoes, deep breath in." And I didn't care. I didn't care who was watching. I didn't care how much time it took. I didn't care who would see me. I did this. I would do it at stop signs. I knew I needed to take a right and go downtown. I take a deep breath and say, Father, which way? And oftentimes I was led in an entirely different direction, and the most remarkable, amazing things would occur. Having practiced and practiced as if my life depended on it. And yes, 6 years later, we paid back every dollar of millions of dollars in debt without claiming bankruptcy. I had become attuned to asking and listening. So one day, this story, now that I've set up the context for the story, one day I was finishing up a little job, a little task, and leaving a building. And I thought, oh, I know what I need to do before I head home. And then I paused and remembered to just ask. I was like, right. Before I jump onto the road, deep breath in, deep breath out. Father, which way? And immediately the idea came to me, oh my gosh, I have not paid Susan for these art lessons, that she's been giving me. And I need to get her a check, but I don't know where she lives. Deep breath in, deep breath out. Which way? I hear turn right, turn left. And I literally, it's just like a nudge to the right, a nudge to the left. I'm driving through town. I don't know where this woman lives. I have maybe the vaguest sense that she lives on this half of the city, but I don't have any idea where she lives.
Can
And
I
I'm
just interrupt you on this drive? Who would try to do this? Who would? Isn't there an easier way, like an email, a call, or something? I mean, this is crazy.
Isn't it? Well, and it sounds crazy, but wait, I am telling you, I have done way crazier things than this with this guidance. And I'm going to tell you that the kinds of miracles that unfolded when we repaid every dollar of that debt with literally almost no income for 6 years, I was so taught to rely so radically. We were so desperately in need of guidance and so willing to surrender and listen. There were no other paths. We were going down. I tell people our lives were going down like a burning dirigible in the sky with just pieces of this thing flaming and falling to the ground. Everything was coming apart. I was literally leaning not unto my own thought, but just, okay, you tell me. And honestly, if this was something that just went nowhere, then I would give up, but it never didn't. So I'm driving and I tune out, I'm driving, I'm listening to music. And then it occurs to me, I'm trying to find Susan's house. And just then at the stop sign, I stop and I look and I think I see what is her car. It's this interesting kind of red color. It's sort of a tomato red. I never see cars like that. And I think, oh, wait, maybe that's her car. So I drive over. Oh, yes, that is her car. Pull in and I walk around her sidewalk. I pull in next to her vehicle at this little house and I walk around her sidewalk. I have my checkbook. I'm like writing her a check on my knee. And I'm thinking I'm just going to slide this check under her door. And her little dog is there at the door looking at me. It's kind of a big sort of scruffy dog. And he's looking at me through the glass. And I think, oh, well, maybe she's home. So I knock. And no one comes. But I can see her dog looking at me, looking to his left, looking at me, looking to his left, looking at me. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, she's here, but she doesn't want to come to the door. So I finish writing the check and I tear it out of the book. And I go to I put it in the crack of the door. I think to myself, okay, that's great. So I'm leaving now and I'm going to hop into my car. And it just like somebody grabs me by the top of the head and turns me around. I feel myself, it's like, just turn around. And I think, oh no. So I go back. The dog's still there. I knock on the door. Dog looks to his left, looks at me, nobody comes to the door. So I'm like, okay, that's great. I did that. I'm leaving. It's like, no, turn around. So I turn around one more time and I knock on the door. And she comes to the door and her face is just tear stained. And she's embarrassed. And she opens the door and says, oh gosh, hi. I said, oh geez, are you okay? I came to bring you this check that I owe you. And she's like, come on in. So we sit down and she shares that she is in a terrible situation. There's a big personal event happening in her life. She's afraid for her future. She's completely feeling cornered. She feels like she's at a dead end. There's so much happening. It's just so heartbreaking. And she's just sobbing. And I'm sitting with her, and just at one after another, as she's speaking, I would think of small anecdotes or stories or things that have occurred in my own life, and was offering these stories to her. And we began just really deeply speaking back and forth. And honestly, the whole time we're talking, I'm like shading my eyes because she has this beautiful like skylight, and it just feels like there's all this light streaming in. So I have my hand, I'm like shading my eyes, like, oh, it's so beautiful in this home. And we're just talking, talking, talking. And all of this time goes by. And we look up and we can't believe it. Like hours have passed. And it doesn't feel like much time has gone by. And she just says, oh gosh, I have to tell you, when you knocked on the door, I was literally on my knees. She says, I'm not much of a religious person, but I was on my knees praying to God to send me an angel. And she said, I feel like I can forgive in this situation. I feel like I have a path to move forward in this situation. And I feel like I have hope for the first time. And I have not felt like I have had hope. I have felt very hopeless. She says goodbye, gives me a hug. I go home. She calls me first thing in the morning and tells me she had called both her daughters that morning, that she had dreamt all night long about the things that we talked about. But I also said to her before we hung up, I said, oh, I just love your house. It's such a neat house. I've never known an old Victorian house to have a skylight in the center of it like that. And she said, I don't have a skylight. She says, it's a Victorian house. I don't have a skylight. Somehow, as I was talking to her, there was so much light coming down. Whoever she was praying, whatever angel she was praying for, it just felt so clear that light was so perceptible. Anyway, I just talked to her for the first time in 4 years the other day, and it's just, we have the most loving bond. And
That's
she
crazy.
truly
I
felt
love the light.
so beautiful.
I love the light. I think that's a pretty cool exclamation mark on the whole thing.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Anyway, and I know it's funny, as I sit here talking to her, I'm like, yeah, that does sound really crazy, doesn't it? But I'm, you know.
Now, here's the crazy part. Here's the crazy part. I'm going to ask you the crazy part. Is that people listen to this and they go, I want that. I want to trust God enough to say, which way? Left, right, which way? Which way do I go? Where do I turn right now? Which way?
The crazy thing is, when I so completely surrender myself, like I tell myself all the time, look, this isn't about me. This isn't about me. If I'm really listening, I'm so absorbed in all my problems, and I'm so absorbed. I mean, we were in such terror when we were going through these financial difficulties. We were out of everything, and just food money was at risk, and we just literally were in such great need. And I was in so much pain that I had I surrendered so fully, and just learned to completely not rely on my I have a business degree. I had a 20 years experience, a very, very wonderfully successful project that we worked on for 20 years and had won international awards. I mean, I'm a person who's quite pragmatic. And I literally was so desperate. And in being up against it and then learning in that time to just say, I know there's a path. I know there's a path. You would not have led us to make the investments that we made. It felt right. There's a path here. So I'm not going to leave somebody standing with our bills. I'm not going to, file bankruptcy and throw it back on their plate. We just didn't feel right in doing that, but we didn't know how on earth we could pay our bills. But every month after month for 6 years, it just turned into this thing where I just wouldn't take the next step. I knew if I'm here working at my desk, I'll stay at my desk until you tell me where to go next. And the idea would be like, oh, hey, dinner's coming. Okay, great. I'll go do dinner.
6 years, but 6 years of this every day for 6 years.
Oh, and the stories are unbelievable. But we were in such an incredibly incredibly painful situation. And I'll tell you, for 6 years every day, it was like it was like being in a gas fire. There was
Yeah.
so much pain
But let's go.
and
Let's
so
go to this
much care.
decision stuff, because do you feel that you were not asking the questions till you could get an answer, or do you just feel like you asked which way, and the answer was forthcoming, or you just waited
You
for the
know,
answer? How did that work?
there's a really cool line in the Bible that says, "Be still and know
Yeah.
that I am." And there's a knowingness there. Like if it doesn't say be still and doubt I'll ever talk to you. It's be still and know. I just was at the point, I was like, look, I am completely surrendering here. And I know there's a path, and I know you know it because I don't. I can't see it.
Has this always
It's
been your story? You always been able
no.
to? Okay. So what turned that on? What happened?
Well, okay. So I would say this yes and no. Yes, I was a super spiritual little kid and had a lot of experiences, I think, as I first initially shared with you, that I'd had through the course of my life, and felt very close to God. But I wouldn't share a lot of the things that would happen because I just didn't feel like anyone could really understand what was going on. But, we're in a tiny little cow town out in the middle of nowhere, and go to school, go to college, work in a professional, corporate. I run the corporate selling arm of a large resort company. It's just what we do. But this reliance, this deep, deep reliance, really, I had to build my muscles, and those muscles weren't muscling out an answer from the divine. Every time I was at an intersection, the muscles were deeply listening and knowing. And so it's funny, people would ask me, when you get to a stop sign, how would you know to go left when you really knew you needed to go downtown and take a right? And it's like, when you get really quiet, that still small voice, or that quiet, almost imperceptibly quiet nudge, or a car would go by and I would see light glint off of it, and I would think, oh, left. And I would go
Yeah.
just
I
as
know
open as I
someone,
could be.
I've talked to people who, where, let's say you're going to turn right, the car literally would not turn right. You ever had that
Right. It
experience where you
stalled.
try to turn the steering wheel and it won't go? Have you ever tried that?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
You start to do something of your own, and you stop and realize, wait a minute, am I listening? And it's not the voice of the divine if it's chattering, if it's in the negative. I never really got directions that said, don't turn right. My husband, who, he has a degree, he was going for pre-med, he's a science-minded fellow. Um, he has a degree in biology, and he's not somebody that was raised with church and religion. But he would say, okay, hon, here's the deal. If you set down the phone and you get one of those little nudgy things, I think you should do it. And now he just openly asks, himself. He openly asks himself. He's like, okay, I know there's a path here, hon. And all right, I'm listening. And it's really neat to see, because this isn't something that's just exclusive to somebody who is really tuned in.
Okay, so this is a
Because,
perfect example of you are teaching your husband how to do this. If you can call
yes.
it teaching, because this isn't like, put your left foot in, take your right foot out, do the hokey pokey. I mean, this is connected to God and how do I hear God. So you're teaching someone who doesn't come from this. So most of us don't come from this. So what's the first step?
Mm. Well, I love that, and know, and know. That whole phrase, be still and know I am. Be still and know I am God. Was that Psalm 46:10 maybe? Forgive me if I quote that wrong. Actually, I have a little bracelet right here, and if I can, yeah, I think it is. If I can, but the first step is this knowing part. Yeah, 46:10. Um, the knowing, like, as awful as this sounds, the brain, the mind is a thinker. It's a chatterbox. It thinks all the time. It thinks like you chew on gum.
Yeah,
Was that?
it wants to take over.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Yeah.
wraps itself. I mean, we train it based on our experiences of the past. So it's always looking forward in the rearview mirror. Like, well, I wouldn't turn there because remember the last time you did that, that guy almost ran over you. It's always thinking in terms of your past experience, or what you've taught it from the past, or what you fed it, but it's not present. And this be still, And dropping into that centered place of just being really quiet and saying, I know you know which way. And that's it. And I would know quickly. I mean, it's something that for me, it's just like skiing. You just go, you follow the next turn, quick, 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 quick. And so it's doesn't have to be this laborious thing. It may be at first, but that's only because we're doubting ourselves. We're not trusting. We're letting our thinking mind chatter back like, oh, come on. You know you need to go, right?
Complete trust.
Yeah. And you know what's so funny is every single time I've done this now for quite a while. And again, I did it because I felt like our lives were dependent on it. It was that dire, even in the throes of what felt like the flames of this terrifying 6-year stretch that we were in. Still, I was always able to, handle what I was being asked to do. No, we didn't have enough money for food the next month. How were we going to pay that note that was, due that month? But when I would get the still small voice, that guidance, it was always very succinct, very calm, very, very full.
Were they nudges versus voices?
Yeah, a lot, mostly just a sense to go this way, go that way. I would be typing I'd be completely not thinking about it, typing a text on a phone. And then I go to hit send, and then my mind would say, geez, are you really going to send a text in the middle of the night to a client? And I would think, oh my gosh, I was about to send a text in the middle of the night to my client. No, I'm not going to do that. My husband said, okay, get a nudge to send it. And that led to the most perfectly and beautifully well-timed and impossible set of miracles that fulfilled a really great need for my father and mother and myself. My dad asked me, he said, do you have any arrows in your quiver, meaning any potential clients that could buy this property of ours? I said, Dad, I have no arrows in my quiver. Well, because of this text I sent in the middle of the night, and I caught a man at an end of the year board meeting who responded to my text immediately under the boardroom table saying, geez, my text asked him, I know your family might have an interest in this ranch. I know it's not good timing for you. I know you're busy, but would it help if I flew from my home state of Montana to your home state of Texas to talk to you about it? And he texted me back and said, I can't believe you caught me. It's midnight here. I'm texting under the boardroom table, and can you be here in the morning? And yes, I was there in the morning, and we put together an opportunity that, again, a series of impossible things came together. But I tell people that at the end of the day, that one arrow, if I had a blindfold on and I would just pull that bow back with that arrow and take a deep breath and wait and feel, which direction do I aim this? And you tell me when to release. 6 months later, that arrow landed with such absolute precision. The closing of the sale of that ranch to that family happened 24 hours before my father's entire loan was due. And it was as though, with eyes closed, aiming into the air, knowing subtle adjustments, deep breath. Now, that arrow flew over, metaphorically, a mountain range and pierced an apple on a moving vehicle. There's no other way I can describe it. It was so precise. It flew farther and more exacting than anything I could have ever done if I studied, the physics of flight and archery. And there's nothing I could have done to prepare for what ended up happening as I surrendered what I thought I should be doing and listened deeply. It's so rewarding to feel that sense. And I'm telling you, it's there for all of us. Everyone is like, gosh, I don't have that intuition. Well, I'll tell you what, my brother does now, and he didn't believe in it. He's a adrenaline sports guy. And, he's not into any kind of church, and he's very much a gear guy, and he'll even say now, that he asks for it. He prays about it, which is so new.
There's a reason why the phrase "let go, let God" is said so often by people. It sounds jargonish, but that's really kind of what you're saying.
And when you think about it, I've had children, but it's the same thing. Every day, do we beat our hearts? do we really make ourselves breathe? Or am I growing my hair and my fingernails? No, I really am being lived on the deepest sense of things. I'm being lived. And so there ultimately is sort of this interface that just tells us, oh, no, you're separate. You better fend for yourself because there is such a limited world out there and it's me versus you, darn it. Duality, right? And we show up feeling like we better fend. Well, I'll tell you, it's a dog eat dog world. And that's not true. If this kingdom of heaven is in the midst of us, I really will take that literally. And I look for it. And if my eyes are not seeing it, I go inside and I'm like, all right, I surrender. You show me because I know it's here. I know right now. Show me. And it's such a beautiful thing to watch these things unfold. It's just amazing.
Thanks, Leesa. Quick Patreon shout out, Joshua Jung. Thank you so much for joining the Patreon family and helping us out on a monthly basis for what we do around here at Touched by Heaven. Appreciate that. If you'd like to do the same, then just come here to episode 179, click your way through, or you go to patreon.com, search for Trapper Jack, and thank you so much in advance for helping us out here at Touched by Heaven, Everyday Encounters with God. Now more with Leesa, episode 179, and being still.
I have one more if you don't mind. Do you mind me sharing one more?
Yes, I just don't have time. I'm just so... Yes, please. Would you tell me another story? That's what I'm here for.
I thought you were serious. Okay. As the story goes, we were driving up to a place that we had not been to near Glacier Park. So beautiful. The trees were tall. The sun was shining. There was so much light coming through the trees. It's just one of those gorgeous summer days right around that 4th of July holiday. And there's this man just coming down the road towards us on his Harley. Immediately as we saw the bike, a deer stepped right out in front of his motorcycle and he struck it just point blank. The bike flipped through the air. The animal was destroyed. Immediately the bike was tumbling down the interstate or the highway, was breaking into pieces on the road and flipping around. And this man, it was like in slow motion, flew past our windows and tumbled down this highway and came to a very awkward stop. His body was in the kind of position that just was horrifying to look at. We immediately pulled over and he had landed just outside of my window. I was sitting there. I had my husband and I were in the car with 4 small children, and my mom and dad were in the vehicle ahead of us. So the fellas had jumped out of the car and ran over to this man and were doing their thing. And I immediately was led to try to distract the kids because we had 4 very tiny children. So I put a little movie on in the car and tried to draw their attention away from the scene. But I mean, I gotta be honest, I was just absolutely undone. My heart was pounding, my hands were shaking. I didn't want to look out the window. My stomach was really turning, if you will. And that's when I noticed in the car in front of me, I watched my mom tilt her head down and I thought immediately, oh, Mom is praying. Oh, right. I should pray. So I began to just say prayers and breathe deeply to try to settle myself down. I recall very specifically saying, however you can use me. But right now, all I know is that I cannot approach this body. I don't have any way of being helpful. And no sooner than I said that, I look over and there is a large truck entering the highway, perpendicular to the highway. There's a dirt road that enters the highway right there in the midst of this accident scene. The vehicle is driving onto the road, not seeing this man. So I jumped out of the car and ran across the road. And I know the driver would have eventually seen him, but I was there to help direct this vehicle around this man. I literally could barely look at him. I mean, the way his head and arms were folded underneath his body and he was entirely motionless, and it was just so distressing. I remember looking up and going, okay, God, like what next? My knees buckled. I just was immediately on the ground next to this man. And I recall distinctly seeing his ear. And without hesitation, immediately I thought, Tell me what you need me to say. Just give me the words. And as I leaned over this man, I placed my hands on either side and I just bring my mouth right to his ear. And I was so surprised. Honestly, I was so surprised by how tender the words that came forward were. I just remember feeling all of this warmth, like sunshine, like there was just a lot of sunshine. And I recall saying, Sweetheart, you're doing just great. And I'm right here with you, and you're doing just great. And you're held in love, in God's love. And nothing can separate you from that love. No incident, no accident, no collision, nothing. You are whole and you are perfect and you are completely untouched. And I am right here with you, and you are doing.
Are you still there? Oh, I lost you.
And I say, No, he's not. I said, But he's doing just great, Dad, to assure my dad. And he goes, Huh. He turns around and he runs back to continue directing traffic. Both my father and my husband went to him, kneeled down by him, tried to speak to him. They were with him while I was putting a movie on for the children in the car. Each of them told me later individually that they were certain he was not alive. But it never occurred to me that he wasn't alive. I just assumed he was unconscious, but it didn't even occur to me. I just could not believe the shape of his body. He was in such an impossible position. It looked like he was badly broken up. And I keep speaking to this man these same words. You're doing just great. You are held in love, and nothing can separate you from that love. You are whole and perfect and untouched. I hear this man go, Oh. And in not too long, I noticed at the end of the road, the volunteer firemen and ambulance are coming. I can tell just, a mile plus down the road, you can see these tiny little flashes of red and blue coming. The volunteer fireman was obviously like full of an adrenaline rush, and he comes roaring up in this vehicle, slams on his brakes, jumps out. The ambulance is behind him. There's 3 men total, and they literally take over the scene. They don't even care what happens. My father's trying to explain what's going on. They're like, we've got it. We need you to just go. Just go. So my husband jumps into our vehicle. My dad jumps into the car with my mom, and we're all just stunned. And as we're driving away, Trapper, literally, this man sits up. And the EMTs are looking in his eyes with those, little lights they have. And we are leaving the scene. And we drive into this place we'd never been before. And for the next 20 minutes, we proceed to get lost.
They were so lost that eventually they did pull over, get out of the car, and start asking directions. And Leesa started talking to this one guy and started telling him the story of what just happened, this incredible story. He stops her in the midst of her story and says, hold on for a second. He walks into a building, comes out with a woman, and says to Leesa, tell her what you just told me, which she did.
Slaps her face with her hands and gasps and says, oh my gosh, that's my husband. And she turns around and she just runs right back into the building.
And the next time Leesa and the family were in the area, Leesa had to know what happened to Mr. Harley Davidson. And she tracked down somebody who knew the wife who had gone home and found her husband fine, just fine. And she's saying, why aren't you at the hospital? I'm fine. No. So she drags him to the hospital. And what do they find?
Now at the ER, she's there. They're checking, does he have a concussion? No. Does he have internal bleeding? No. Does he have organ damage? No. Broken bones? No. She said they checked for everything. And she said, the funniest thing about it is he had nothing on his head or his face or his hands or his forearms. And he didn't have a scratch on him. She said he was completely untouched.
Isn't it interesting that God wanted you to know the end result? And how on earth do you go through that kind of accident without a scrape?
Without a scrape. And we watched him hit the ground. I mean, they checked him for concussion. He didn't have a helmet on. I'll never forget because it was like slow motion. When he flew by the car, the man had a white t-shirt on with a red flannel shirt that was unbuttoned, but rolled at the elbows. He had on denim blue jeans and a leather belt with a buckle. And he had like an American flag bandana tied around his head, which was bald. And he had on cowboy boots. And I just will never forget that. It was like slow motion when this whole thing happened in front of us as he flew down the road and tumbled by us. So, there was a lot that happened there. And the only reason we knew the end of the story is so we could share the story, so we could know what happened. The words were so profound. And
Did it feel like you were given the words?
oh, I do. I really do. And I think that what I felt, it was a combination. I felt so much warmth and love it was like beams of sunshine.
Is that who you are, or did you feel like there was something else going on there?
Both. I do feel like that's who I am, but I will say that when the first words that came out of my mouth were sweetheart, you're doing just great and I'm here with you. And the word sweetheart, I remember thinking, oh, that is a higher sense of love than me. I would have been too timid to address him as sweethearts. It's a very tender way to approach someone. Oftentimes I've thought of angels as God's messengers, if you will, And so for me, it felt very much like a divine love that was simply like just a ray of love pouring through. And to know that in the face of such an intense impact and intense incident, to know honestly, it just he was held in love. I knew that. I could feel that. It just seemed so absolute. It wasn't just pretty words. We are all held in love. And here I was witnessing something and all of my senses were going, oh, this is awful. Oh, this is bad. My hands are shaking. I'm in kind of this state of shock and turmoil because I'm reacting to what I saw. But what was known was no, nothing can separate you from that love. And that's true. And here he sits up as we're driving away. And for me, that was like a miracle seeing that. I was like, wow, that's beautiful. Isn't that remarkable?
It is. It is. Because there's nothing like what you're talking about. There's nothing in the world like God including you in the process. You've been an excellent teacher. What's our takeaway? I know you've kind of said it. You're going to probably say the same thing again. But as we end this time together, what is our takeaway?
Well, I'm going to say one thing I haven't said yet, and that is, I recall Jesus saying two things, love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. And when you really think of yourself as fending or me versus you or separate, those seem like hard things, but love is love. And having that sense of love or joy is the ultimate faith, in the face of all these hard experiences, to have love and faith right in my heart. It's like, how could you have love when you're underwater financially and you're going to lose everything and you're up against it? It's like, that's fear. In the face of that, I just hold to love and then ask. I just surrender and go, look, I know you're love. I know you're all, and I'm listening. And there it is. I know I'm going left and I don't know why, but I love you and I'm grateful. And when I catch myself fretting in thoughts about myself, I let that go, because in order to love God and love my neighbor, I got to love me too. So it comes down to love. And then letting go and having faith in that. Just, all right, I love you. I love you and I know you love me too. And I'm listening. And then the most beautiful thing unfolds.
Thanks, Leesa. Left, right, yes, no, be still, and know that he has the plan. We hook into love, we plug into his answers. Let's also listen to this one again, okay? I mean, it's all there. It really is all there. How powerful this connection can be with God. Thank you again, Leesa. Wow. I'm going back again, I'm telling you, because my mind's, it's more still than it was at the beginning of this. Don't make me come up there, Okay, so what's your story? Do tell. Tell me your story here at touchedbyheaven.net. Angel encounter, near-death experience, whatever it is, whatever it happens to be, let me know. Thank you again for your help through Patreon, episode 179, or go to patreon.com. Search for Trapper Jack, and that'll get you there. Thank you for keeping us a 5-star podcast in your podcast app. By the way, if you want our weekly email, just come here to episode 179 and look for Stay Informed, okay? Okay, let's stay right here at touchedbyheaven.net. Just hang around for a week and another episode will show up. Thank you for listening to Touched by Heaven, everyday encounters with God. I'm Trapper Jack.